then it's important to get what's called their BSR, or their best sellers rank. And you can actually just click on the product listing, and if you scroll down the product description, you'll see it says best sellers rank. It's very, very important that that number is less than 10,000 for at least 4 or 5 of those sellers. Okay, and what that basically means is if that number is less than 10,000, it means they're actually making a good volume of sales.
Welcome back to the Talking Web Marketing podcast with myself, Ilana Wexler. This is a show where we reveal the best tips, tricks and tactics to increasing your website traffic and then converting that traffic into leads and sales. We also discuss what's working right now in the ever-changing world of web marketing so you can apply it to your business. Welcome back to another episode of Talking Web Marketing. I have a lovely gentleman who I have invited as a guest today, who's called Sam Fawal. I hope I didn't butcher that, Sam. Apologies if I have. And Sam is come to talk to us today about choosing the right product to sell, and specifically sell on Amazon. I enlisted the help of Sam a few months ago to help me choose a product to launch on Amazon, and he was a wealth of knowledge. So I thought, you know what, let's spread Sam's knowledge out far and wide, and let's invite him on today's show so we can talk about really what it comes down to, choosing a product, why you choose one over another, and various criteria. So Sam, welcome to today's show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be on, and it's been fantastic. Our catch-ups are usually really good, and they really go in depth in regards to everything that we decide to speak about. So yeah, it's really awesome for having me on. Thank you.
No, the pleasure is mine. So why don't I'm always fascinated in kind of people's stories, how they've ended up where they are, because I know I've got a long and convoluted story. So can you give us just a high level kind of background to what you do and how you ended up where you are?
Sure, absolutely. So probably it's been about 6 years since I've been doing Amazon. And before that, I really wasn't too sure exactly what I wanted to do. So I left school at a young age and became an apprentice, actually being a diesel mechanic, believe it or not. And
Really?
the only I couldn't believe it. It was probably only about 8 or 9 months, but I had no idea what I wanted to do, and that's kind of the one thing that I just fell into. And then I remember I had someone there by the name of Nick, and he took me under his wing. And I remember he used to teach me all this really cool stuff, right? He was like an older brother, and on the lunch break, I used to use his money and play poker because that's what he taught me to do at 16 years old.
That's very responsible of him, isn't it?
So I ended up becoming a really great poker player actually because of that. But basically, what happened was, I remember we had a talk one day, and he's like, Sam, do you really want to go home to your future wife with your greasy hands like that every night? And I kind of really struck a chord. And he always told me, look, you're smarter than that. Go find something else. And I eventually did. I think I lasted there about 8 or 9 months, and then I moved on from that. And I tried a lot of different things. To really just kind of try to make money, I guess, or try to do something that I really wanted to do. And so from what ended up happening was I ended up doing what a lot of other people do when they're looking for a home-based business, is get online and search for home-based business or best work from home or whatever it was. And I couldn't really find anything. It was very, very hard to find anything anything that looked credible. And I remember when I was about 18, I used to go to my local bakery nearly every day and get a pie or a croissant or something, and I actually had a lady there by the name of Nee, and she was actually Vietnamese, which ended up being very interesting. But she actually told me once, and I remember going in there and I was feeling quite down. She said to me, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just things with work." And she said to me, "Look, are you looking to make some extra money?" And I said, "Yeah, I am actually." And she said, "Look, why don't you come on Tuesday night to a meeting in North Melbourne?" And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Look, come there. We have a bit of a meeting." I'm like, "Okay." So I ended up going there, and there was probably about 400 or 500 people, and inside that room, and it was kind of like a little hall. And I'm thinking, what is this? What have I got myself into? And this was going back about 17 years ago now. And basically, what it was actually a meeting for Amway, right? So I was like,
You
oh,
got
and
Amway.
yeah, so at that time, I mean, I had no idea what Amway was, right? So I ended up joining, and after about 7 months, guess how much money I made?
I have no idea.
Nothing. I didn't make anything, right?
Could either be one of those two options, nothing or a huge amount.
Exactly right. So I didn't make anything. But one thing that I was extremely grateful for was the education and the financial education they were teaching me, and also a lot of the authors they were introducing me to. So they're really good when it comes to education, and they introduced me to Robert Kiyosaki,
Wow.
which I started reading a lot of his books, and Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of them, and that really struck a nerve for me, and I really appreciated it, and I really decided to get on the other side of the quadrant, which is either a business owner or investor, because that's where Robert Kiyosaki said that 95% of the world's wealth is created, and that's where you're going to have a lot more time if you make your money work for you. So, and he basically said that's why he recommends things like network marketing and multi-level marketing, was because of that reason, even though they're extremely difficult to make a really good income with. And when you do, because I found that the hard way is I joined a lot of these multi-level marketing and direct sales opportunities, and but what had happened is when I built a network, when I built a team, a lot of the times things change. Either the companies are not there anymore, or the owners would change, or the payment structure would change, and so you spent all this hard work, 2 or 3 years of building this huge organization, and then next thing you know, it's all crumbled. And at one stage, when I was 24, I actually won an award. I won an award in LA, so I got flown up to LA, and I was actually there, and I won an award for the third income earner for the direct sales company I was in. That was out of about 3,000 people, so that was really great. And every 12 weeks we used to go to personal development conferences. So we used to go to Hawaii and the Bahamas and saw a lot of the top personal development speakers, which was really, really inspiring. I did that for a good 3 years or 4 years.
So
And
that
then
was with
basically,
Amway, was it? No.
no, that was with another company. So
Right,
Amway, I ended up leaving.
Right,
Amway, I
right.
ended up leaving after about 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, right.
And then and the other company's not around anymore. And like I said, they just kind of come and then they seem to leave really quickly. So basically, what ended up happening then was I was at that crossroads again, because the same thing had happened with this company. I'd built this huge organization, I'd done really well, and the next thing you know, I'm gone. So there was a period probably when, I guess just before starting Amazon, where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to get involved in anything like that again, just because of from experience. So what were my other options? And I was looking at things like maybe trading or doing something like that, but again, I wasn't really sure about that. And then one day I actually saw a post on Facebook from a Facebook friend of mine talking about Amazon, and this was about 6 years ago now, and he'd mentioned how he's got a product on Amazon, and he's doing really well. And I thought that's interesting, and so I started looking into it a little bit more, and I decided to basically get on board with Amazon and selling on Amazon. And it was a little bit tricky for us, I guess, Australians to sign up to Amazon 6 years ago. And the reason being was because if you wanted to sell on Amazon.com, well, not because they weren't in Australia, but basically I was looking at selling on Amazon.com, and you couldn't actually sell on Amazon.com if you're Australian unless you had a US address, you had a US bank account, you had a US phone number.
Wow.
So it was very hard to actually start selling on Amazon.com, and it took me, and there was a very small group of us Australians selling. It was probably only about 5 or 10 of us that I knew at that time that were selling in Amazon in the US. And a lot of us were trying to figure out how to actually do it. So I ended up figuring it all out and got a US account and everything. And then I started selling on Amazon. At that same time, I actually started traveling the world and went to Vietnam. I was traveling, I guess, a little bit more than what I used to before. But this time I decided to live on the road. And so about 6 years ago, about that same time, my partner and I, we basically left Melbourne and went for our little adventure to Asia, and we landed in Vietnam and loved Vietnam so much, and we found ourselves there for a good 5 years. Just really, it was a great place for us, and it was a really good place for us to build an online business, because the costs in Vietnam are way cheaper than what they are in Australia, right? So you have a lot more leverage when it comes to that. So that was really good. I actually started selling a lot of handmade products in Vietnam because I thought they were great. So what I did was I used to go to handmade stores, and I speak to the store owners and I say, look, how about if I get your products online, and what I'll do is I'll take a photo. I just want to take a photo of all your products. I want to get them online, and if I make a sale, I'll come and buy it from you at whatever price you wanted, that you have on your shelf there, of course, and then I'll ship it off. And they're like, yep, no worries. So that's what I started doing. I started selling a lot on Etsy also. And I started selling because they already had the inventory and it was great product. So selling them on Etsy. Then I got into eBay as well, and I actually built a really good relationship with the Bed Bath & Beyond purchasing manager in the US, she was really great, and she really provided some really great value for me too. So I was doing a lot of selling drop shipping actually through Overstock and Bed Bath & Beyond. I wouldn't recommend that now, and I can go into more of a reason why. Etsy was fantastic, really loved it. But then as Amazon started picking up, I decided to put my full attention on Amazon, because that's where I was building my brand, that's where I was building my business, and I was getting the best results out of that. And I remember the first time I was looking at for products for my Amazon business, and I was thinking, well, what do I want to get into? And I made a list of about 150 products. And I remember I wanted to do something really cool, something really cool, something really sporty, or something in emergency, survival gear, camping. And I had 150 products, and I only had 3 products that were in the kitchen niche listed on our spreadsheet. And the product that ticked all the boxes was a potato masher. Right? Can you believe it?
Yeah, right. But maybe on that,
Yep.
that it ticked all the boxes. What were those boxes?
Yeah, sure. So basically, what had happened was, when I was looking at all the criteria, and this is something that I do when I'm looking at all the different criteria for a product, it's very important to look at everything as a whole. So a lot of people make their choices based on one stat that they see. So for example, one tool that we use is called Merchant Words for Amazon, and basically what that does, it brings up how many times people are actually searching for that particular product on Amazon. And so what I do is I actually look at everything, from doing coaching now with a lot of the guys, and sometimes I do one-off calls where they want me to analyze their product, and I realize that they had only looked at that one stat. So it's very important, and this is what I look at. I look at the merchant words volume. So I want to see a certain amount of people actually searching for that particular product. So that's very important. Another thing that I actually look at is the Google volume. So I put in, once I have a list of a lot of the different keywords that I'd be using to actually market that product, I actually have a look on Google to have a look at the demand there also. And that lets me know also in advance whether or not I can actually do some type of a Google campaign for that particular product. So I look at the merchant words, I look at the Google volume, I also look at the Google trend. The trend is very important to look at, to see how your product is doing over the period of the last 5 years. So I usually I put my main keyword into Google Trends and see if it's on an incline, see if it's on a decline, see if the product is fairly stable, see if it's seasonal. Because if it's seasonal, you'll see the spikes in summer, and then they'll come back down again. So that's another criteria that I'll look at. Another thing that I look at is, so once I've established that, yes, there is some type of demand for this particular product, and then what I do is I take it to the next step, and now I get onto Amazon and start to have a look on Amazon to see if the product is actually selling.
Before we kind of get on to that, I would imagine that the reason keyword information and tapping into the tools like Merchant Words and the Google Planner tool and Trends is really kind of tapping into, is this something that people already want? Like, is there existing search volume versus you've invented something and no one knows it exists, and then you've got to do like a whole awareness campaign. It's like, I would imagine it's tapping into where there's existing demand, and really you're just putting your product in front of those people who are already looking for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. And like you touched base on, I mean, if you decide to create a product that no one's heard of, well, you need a lot of marketing money for that, because you got to build a brand awareness campaign and you got to let everyone know it's there. So what I do, and especially for Australia, when it comes to Australia, because we already have, I mean, we have 24, 25 million in regards to population. It's a lot less than the US that has over 300 million. Yes. So what you want to be doing is you want to be tapping into a product when you're selecting for the Australian market that's already high in demand. That's very, very important, because if you start to go too niche in Australia, you'll find yourself not really making too many sales. And you'll need to compensate with that with doing some external marketing, which can be a little bit costly. So I like to find mainstream products in Australia that have huge demands, that are selling really well, and then I basically come into there and do a better job than my competition, whether it is I provide a product that is not listed yet on Amazon in Australia. So, for example, we know the demand in Australia is for it. Our competition is making money. Now I get onto Amazon US and I find a product. So let's say, for example, it's a tablet stand, right, for your iPad or for your phone. Then what I would do is, once I've identified, yep, there's heaps of demand for that product, and there is heaps of demand for that product, by the way, then I would go to the US or Germany or France, Amazon, and I would see if I can find a tablet stand that's selling extremely well there. So it has really great reviews, it's got really good sales volume, and then I would just launch that in Australia and just tap it into there.
Yeah, right. So what about a super niche, or niche for American listeners, product on US? My guess, and you're the expert, so this is a question, not a statement, is does the same apply for the States? Like, to go after an iPad stand in America is like serious deep pocket stuff. Like, would you go more specific or more niche in the US versus in Australia, purely because of the sheer population size?
100%. So with Australia, because the population size is a lot smaller, you want to go for a product that's not as niche, more mainstream. When it comes to the US, you want to go as super niche as you can. Yep. So what I mean by that is this. So let's say, for example, if someone says to me in the US that they want to get into the pets category, that's too broad. What does that mean, the pets category? I mean, what are you exactly selling? It's way too broad. So, but if someone said to me, okay, look, we want to get into the pets category, but we want to sell products related to birds, and we want to sell products related to birds, and we only want to focus on cages. So we want to sell bird cages, right? That's our niche. That's our brand. That's what we want to do. We want to be known for selling bird cages. We're going to have 100 different variations of bird cages, and that's what we want to be known for. So that's very, very specific. Right, if someone they know exactly what they want to do and they build a brand around that. When it comes to the US market, you need to find a very specific niche, right? Because if you find a niche that's too broad, the competition is already there, and it's very, very hard to outcompete with those already established sellers, unless you have extremely deep pockets, and even then it can become a little bit risky. So with the US market, I like to find specific pockets, specific niches within that market, and do a better job there.
Yeah, cool. And lastly, just on the keyword selection type thing, what about such a thing as called keyword depth? Like, how many sort of variations are of your keyword? Are you worried if there's only really one type of keyword, or it doesn't really factor in?
Depth is very, very important. So I don't like to select products that only have one main keyword, or one keyword that people can type in before they actually find it. I look for a number of different keywords. So usually 3, 4, 5. The more the better, as long as they're obviously specific to the actual product. So yes, depth is very important also.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Okay, so say we've found a good keyword, and what's next in our investigation process?
Yep, awesome. So after you've identified, I guess, the niche, then it's a matter of, like I said, probably the merchant words is really a good place to start in regards to finding the good volume for those keywords. And if they do have good depth, good volume, Google, and then the trend. And then after that is to get onto Amazon, put in that main keyword. And this is one of the very first things I look for to identify whether or not that product is going to be suitable in the US market. So this is the very first thing that I look for to identify once I get onto Amazon, is when you go to Amazon.com, if you type in the word, and let's say you want to sell a coffee grinder or a manual coffee grinder, So you put the keywords in there, manual coffee grinder. Then what you want to do is, this will give you a really good indication on whether or not the product, you can actually get onto page 1, which is where you want to be, which is where all the sales happen, or not. So one thing that I teach my guys in my group is basically to get onto Amazon.com, put their main keyword in there, and look for sellers, right? So look for sellers that have less than 50 reviews, right? So make a note of how many sellers have less than 50 reviews. So you might find, okay, on page 1 for the main keyword of manual coffee grinder, we have 12 sellers that have less than 50 reviews. Okay, that's good. So basically what that does is it lets us know that, okay, there's a lot of new sellers that are on page 1. If they have less than 50 reviews, and if they have 10 reviews or 5 reviews, you know they're a fairly new seller, all right? So that's a good sign. So,
Okay,
and the
so
reason why...
the reviews are like a proxy for how new of a seller they are.
Exactly. How new of a seller they are, and also how hard or how easy it is for you to get onto page 1, right? So if there's a lot of sellers that have very low reviews on page 1, then that's a good sign. It shows you that you can actually do that too, right? Because there's a lot of new sellers on there. But the second thing is that's very, very important is once you've identified that there's, say, 12 sellers that have less than 50 reviews, then it's important to get what's called their BSR, or their best sellers rank. And you can actually just click on the product listing, and if you scroll down the product description, you'll see it says best sellers rank. It's very, very important that that number is less than 10,000 for at least 4 or 5 of those sellers. Okay, and what that basically means is if that number is less than 10,000, it means they're actually making a good volume of sales.
So the BSR is a number, the lower the better.
Exactly.
Right.
The lower the better. We're always looking at the very first number. So when you go to Amazon.com, if you click on the product and then you go down to the product description, you'll see best sellers rank. Look at the very first number there. That's the main category number. And basically what that means is if that number is 1,000, it means that out of all the products in that main category, this product is ranked number 1,000 for the most selling product. So I like to look for instantly. I like to see if there's a number of sellers that have less than 50 reviews, and also if there's a number of sellers that have a rank that the ones that do have less than 50 reviews have a rank of less than 10,000. That'll give me an indication that yes, there's a lot of new sellers on page 1, and yes, they're making a lot of money.
Okay, and this BSR number, how often is that updated?
It's updated almost live, almost daily.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't actually, it's updated all the time. It's updated all the time, but it doesn't fluctuate too much. So you can actually use that as a metric.
And sorry, one last question back on the search volume with the merchant words. Is there a minimum search volume that you require? Or do you really just kind of go off the BSR number as that's the proxy for the search volume?
Yeah, so basically when it comes to merchant words, there isn't a specific number that I require because I look at everything kind of as a whole. I look at to see what it's doing everywhere, because sometimes you'll find you go to merchant words and you'll put in a specific search term and you might find it only has 10,000 searches a month in the US market, which is extremely low. But then you might go to Amazon.com and type in that same search term and see that there's a lot of volume, a lot of sales. So there's a lot of conversion. Even though there's a smaller amount of search volume, there's a lot of conversion. That still tells me that it could be a good product. So in regards to merchant words, I would say take it as try to get depth, keyword depth, and not really worry too much in regards to the search volume only, but it's important to make sure you do the other checks also. So the answer is probably no.
Okay, cool. So to circle back then to when you said your first product was the potato masher that ticked all the boxes. So these were the kinds of boxes that it was ticking, that it's the search volume and the BSR and reviews.
Exactly.
So you launched your potato masher and then what?
So it was fantastic. I mean, it was a really, really great product. My second month, I did 17,000 in revenue after launching in the US, and it did really well. And one of the things that really determines whether or not your product does well also, and we've touched base on this before, also is the point of difference. It's very, very important that you don't launch the same product as everyone else. Yeah. A lot of people launch the exact same product, and it's very hard to stand out. And what happens is you end up competing on price. And it becomes very, very difficult. So it's very important that if you're looking to get a product into the market, once you've established there is demand, there is sales, then to do something different, to either bundle. Bundling is usually the quickest way to have a point of difference. So bundling meaning adding another product to it as a bonus. Another idea is to maybe add an ebook, or another idea is to maybe do a small customization of the actual product with the manufacturers. Or to get a completely new product that's not in that market yet. So maybe find a product in Germany that's not in the US and then bring that over to the US and sell that. So there are a few different ways of having a point of difference, but it's absolutely crucial to actually have that.
Yeah, cool. So what are your thoughts on Amazon Australia and how it's going, and kind of, I guess you talk to so many other Amazon sellers. What are people's experience selling on Amazon Australia versus Amazon America, etc.?
Sure. So Amazon Australia and the US is completely two different, I guess, kettle of fish. And basically with the Australian market, it's really about playing the medium term to long term strategy. It's very easy to get a product into Amazon Australia at the moment. It's not that difficult to get onto page one in Amazon Australia. So that's the kind of that's kind of where you want to be in regards to building a long-term or medium-term business. Is you're essentially going there, getting these products, and you're basically buying yourself or getting yourself some real estate space there in Amazon. So what ends up happening is we've seen Amazon pick up year to year or month to month now. And basically what that means is that you're in prime position to take advantage of that without really doing too much extra work. I think expectation is a really big thing also, because it's very, very important that when you do go into Australia, you know you're playing the medium to long-term game with a lot of the products and a lot of the categories there. In saying that, though, there are some, we're finding the best category I'm finding especially is electronics. The electronics category is fantastic, and a lot of people, they get scared of electronics because they believe that category requires special approval, or it's gated, or it's hard to get into. But as long as you stick to products that you don't need to plug into the power, or that do not take batteries, that are in electronics, then you'll be fine. So things like tripods, things like tablet stands, things that are USB charging are okay. Yeah. So a lot of those products actually do very, very high volume in Australia, 10, 15 sales a day. I have one of my guys who's doing 5 or 10 sales a day, also in electronics, just from one product. So imagine you got 20 of those products. Now you're doing 500,000 sales a month at good margins. So there is room in Australia right now to be making money right now, but it's very, very important that you choose a product that is very, very high in demand. And if you don't and you go more niche, then you're playing the medium to long-term game. So that's Australia there. The US market is competition is the biggest thing that you need to worry about, and also how much money you have to spend in that market, because you're going to go for a bit more money to spend in regards to getting your inventory and making sure that you have enough product to restock, etc. But the US market is a beast. Once you get onto page one, pretty high for your keyword or for your product, you could be selling a lot. I have another one of my guys in the US doing about 600 or 700 units every couple of months. So yeah, it's really two different markets, two very different strategies, but they both work.
Yeah, interesting. And I would imagine, since one of your criteria by which, if you're going to enter a market, is if there are low reviews, getting reviews for your listing is so important. Do you have a couple of tips of the best ways that you can at least get some reviews? Because considering it hinges so much on kind of how your listing looks compared to others, etc. Like, it's such a review platform.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, another thing, it's very, very important that one mistake that I see a lot of people do when they're launching their product on Amazon is they'll get their inventory into Amazon, and let's say they have 300 units into Amazon. Then what they'll do is they'll actually do a launch too early. And what that basically means is, as soon as you get your product into Amazon, if you do a launch And a launch meaning that you want to get ranked on page one. And the only way you get ranked on page one is if you sell a lot of product really quickly, right?
Like
and then that
sales velocity.
Exactly. So you get a high sales velocity by selling a lot of products really quickly. That gets you on page one. Then if you have a good enough product and your price is right, you should stay there, right? That's usually the logic behind it. But what a lot of people do is they'll launch their product and they have no reviews. So they launch their product, they get onto page one, right? But now they're the only seller that has no reviews. So there's no social proof, there's no credibility, and a lot of people don't end up purchasing their product. So what happens is they end up going to page two, page three. So they've done this huge launch, they've got rid of maybe 30, 40 units to get on page one. Then what happens is those 30 or 40 units start leaving reviews, then they have to do the launch again and get rid of another 30, 40. When really the way they should have done the launch is I break up my launches in two phases. So I have phase one where I'm trying to get at least 5 or 10 reviews before I even do the big launch. So I'm aiming to get those 5 or 10 reviews, and then once I have those 5 or 10 reviews, depending how competitive the space is, and then I'll do a second launch to catapult them to page one. Now, when I get on page one, I've already got 5 or 10 reviews, so my conversion rate is a lot better, and it gives it a way better chance of actually staying on page one. In regards to getting your first 5 or 10 reviews, there are a few different strategies that I teach for sure. And one of those strategies is actually getting people to test your product. So I never advise anyone to actually ask for anyone else for a review or to hire people to leave them reviews. It's actually against Amazon's terms. But what you can do is I actually hire people to do some, answer some questions in regards to my product listing page. And what they do is they actually go through processes if they're a buyer. I get them to answer questions related to my product, related to my product page, and I actually still don't ask them for a review. I don't do that, but what I do is they receive my autoresponders in Amazon, because from Amazon, after they've made the purchase, you're allowed to ask them for a review through Amazon. So that's the way that I do it, and from that they end up leaving me a review that I have not actually specifically asked for outside of Amazon. So it's kind of a little bit of a hack, but that's the way that I actually do that there. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. So you sort of touched on someone's one particular no-no. What are some other sort of mistakes that people make, so that I guess anyone listening to this can listen to these and possibly avoid some of the mistakes that the common ones that you see people make?
Sure. First of all, being realistic in regards to their budget. It's very, very important that when you get involved in Amazon, you don't overstretch the amount of money that you have to put towards this business. So, for example, if you have $2,000 to get started in Amazon, then you might not want to use the full $2,000 just on that one product, right? So you might want to use only a portion of that for your first product. So most of the people, the reason why even some successful people, where you'd say they're successful, they get a product up and they're selling really well, but now they can't afford to restock it because they don't have that extra cash flow. So I think the very first important thing is to be realistic in regards to how much money you have to put towards your business. So how much money are you not going to miss?
Yes.
Right. So if it disappears, you're not going to miss it. It's not going to put any financial pressure on yourself or your family or anything like that. So that's very important. That's step one. Step two is launching in a marketplace with not enough inventory. So, for example, in the US marketplace, you really need a minimum of 300 units. And it depends on what you're going to launch, but on average, probably around about 300 units at the absolute minimum to make sure you do a launch for that particular product in the US market. So anything less than that, it's going to be very hard to get onto page one without running out of inventory very quickly and then needing to do everything all over again. And that could be a lot harder. The third mistake I find people doing is going with their emotions, making decisions based on emotions as opposed to logic. So, for example, or facts, I guess, based on the criteria they actually find. So a lot of people, I would ask them, why do you select that product? They'll say to me, I liked it. I thought it would do well. When I select the product, I know why it's going to do well. I know how many searches it has. I know the depth of the keywords. I know that the trend is on an incline. I know that I can compete with the price. My profit margins are there. So I can give you a really long answer in regards to why I choose my products and why I selected that. And so another thing is to make sure that you've done your homework in regards to what product you're going to get and what the game plan is also. So they're probably the key ones, I would say. And that's probably about it, I think, from the top of my head.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. You've been so interesting to talk to, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So thank you so much for coming on to chat on our today's show. But before we go, where can people find out a bit more information about you and your services and what you offer people?
Sure. It's been great to be on here, that's for sure. I always look forward to these calls. They're always heaps of fun. That's great. And I love listening to a lot of these too, because you get a lot of the golden nuggets, which is cool. So thank you for providing this platform also. It's brilliant. All right, so Amazon Bullet, so AMZ bullet.com, where we basically have a service there where we help out with Amazon listings and writing up your listing and doing keyword research and competitor analysis and things like that. So that's probably the best place to find me.
Awesome. So AMZ Bullet, all one word, I'm sure, .com. And that sounds fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. It's been a pleasure as always talking to you. And for resources on today's show, you can just download the show notes from our website. And thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon, Sam.
Awesome. See you later. Bye-bye.